Hi, I'm Captain Larry Bell with Texas Fishing Tips, and this is your weekly fishing report.
Down here in Bray Cove, the little back lakes, they're all back off of these two little mouths, one that's right into here, and then the other one that comes back in here and takes you back into Little Brundit, a little zigzag path that takes you back there. There are some fish that are hanging out back in these areas. With all the extra water that we've got, pay attention to the weather, people. We have got a storm that's moving in on us. Uh, Probably wouldn't be a great idea to be out in this kind of stuff right now. We're going to have a ton of extra water that's going to be in our system right now. So really what it's going to do, it's going to change our fishing patterns up. It's going to change where your fish are being located. It's going to change where you're going to catch those fish when you have that opportunity. So take all that into consideration. Again, with the weather and everything that's coming our way, it's going to be a little bit difficult. But that said, what happens is when you get all this extra water in these kinds of areas that typically are pretty shallow, it's going to push more water into them, then all the bait's going to get pushed back into those areas as well. And then once the bait gets back in there, the fish will follow at some point. Those are areas that you need to have or be points of emphasis for you when you get back out on the water. Topwater baits in these areas would be fantastic because you can really use those as a searcher bait. You can work areas that typically, with the amount of grass that's being grown back in our grass system, it is really healthy right now in all these little back lakes. So that grass is all going to be underneath the water level. So you take those topwater baits and search the shorelines, search out these potholes, find them, the structure's all there. Really good conditions for those types of baits. Now, as thick as the grass is in some of these back lakes, the one thing that you're really going to want to consider, if you can't control your depth with your plastics, with an open hook, put that weedless setup on there. That'll get you in and out and through that, or make that bait really effective. It's working through the grass, working through the potholes, working the edges of that. It really becomes effective. Those fish have a hard time turning that down, especially if there's not a tremendous amount of bait back in these areas. Again, that will be one of those things that will be a point of emphasis for you to tie on there and throw those things. But again, make sure you pay attention to the weather. Again, always incorporate your majors and minors in this time frame, and you'll have some good positive luck. In continuation, down here in Bray Cove, around this point, all this back area through here, back behind that little floating house, it's back behind there, around the point, down past the Texas Parks and Wildlife little floating building, or the little launch area that has the building on it that's been tore up. This whole back shoreline all the way down to Cedar Bayou mouth. All this area here, get out of your boat, work all this. Again, the grass is really, really healthy all back in these areas. A good amount of bait has been working here, but again, we've got weather issues that are coming in on us this week, so the things that you really have to pay attention to is that, because all that's going to change. Just like I said in the last report, all this water level that comes up, it's going to push fish, it's going to move fish. So if you've caught fish in these areas in the past 10 days, those fish are not more than likely going to be in that area. So you really have to focus on your structure, focus on your depth of your water, when your majors and minors are really going to kick in for you. See pay attention to pelicans and birds and see what they're doing in the areas that you're trying to locate and find bait. Because sometimes with that much water in there, they're not showing itself as much as it would when it's lower. So you really have to pay attention to other factors, i.e. the birds, pelicans, and so on. Pay attention to the shell. Again, that's another form of your structure. Guts, edges, areas that you've been fishing thigh deep to waist deep water are probably going to be even more than that now, so you're really going to want to push up close to your shorelines. If you don't have a tide report, you really need to get one or get access to one to see where all this actual water is hanging out at, because again, there's going to be so much water in our system over the next few days, it's not even going to be funny. So it's going to make it really difficult. But again, pay attention to your bait. The down souths have been working the best in these areas on our normal tide. So again, it's get your topwater bait out, get it up there close to the shoreline, because all that stuff up against the shoreline is probably going to be waist deep water more than likely. So it'll really be a perfect bait to really search in there. And once you kind of start getting some blow ups or some activity, switch over to your plastic, or if you have somebody with you and you're working that bait back, then they see those blow ups but they're not taken, have them to throw in there right behind you with that plastic in front of them, and you'll get your opportunities to catch those fish. Once again, weather issues this whole week. All these mouth entrances to these back lakes, like into Fence, into here, all up in there in Long Reef Bend, these little back lakes that dump off into here. Be careful when you go through those entrances of those things now, because with the extra water, all that's going to be much deeper. So if you're wading it, it's going to be really difficult to get across it. Probably won't be able to get across it. As you come on around up here to Jaybird Point, you got the back lakes that are there. All these areas along here will all come into play. It opens all these back lakes up for you to get back into these areas. If your boat runs skinny enough, you can get into some of these, and you can get way back into some of these back lakes that you typically would not be able to, especially this week with the amount of water that's going to be in here. So pay attention to that kind of stuff, because all that stuff's going to be really important. Bait will be pushed back into these areas. You got to make sure that you look for those things. Look for birds working back in those areas. Redfish have been pushed back into here, working tight to the shoreline. Again, the topwater bait has been the most productive searcher bait. So you can really find some active fish. Even if you're not getting takes with the topwater bait, just locate with it. Throw it, work it, and you start getting blow-ups. You may get a few swirls on it. Then it just kind of lets you know where they're at and what's going on with it. And if you got an extra person or two with you, y'all can kind of team up and work that area. One working the topwater and the other throwing the plastics, or even the double D. Works really well in this scenario, because you can get that bait down in front of their face, and you'll get those takes that you're trying to get with that topwater bait. But don't give up on the topwater bait, because it's a lot of fun when you do get those takes, those big blow-ups. They are tremendous to watch a redfish blow up on that, and you'll get every once in a while you get a sprinkled in trout in there too that's a pretty good fish. So pay attention to your tides again this week. I don't know if early in the week's going to be fishable or not, but probably by Wednesday or Thursday those opportunities will present themselves, and this water will still be hanging around in here. So as you do that, make sure that you stay safe out there on the water. Look for these areas, and you're going to find your fish.
Thanks for watching. I'm Captain Larry Bell.